I confessed my love to my roommate Henry. But he posted me on the campus forum and publicly executed me. My roommate is a pervert who likes men. How disgusting. In desperation, I was forced to change my bed. Because my new roommate is the same type as me and won't think I'm disgusting. Henry was completely panicked. As if he was sick, he stayed in my dormitory every night until the lights went out. Before confessing to Henry, I was actually prepared to be rejected. But at that time I really thought it was just an ordinary confession. There are only two results. Success, become lovers. If you fail, you will become a stranger. But when the post on the campus forum that almost named and exposed the roommate by name, "My roommate is a pervert who likes men, it's so disgusting," became the #1 hot post. I know that my future life will no longer be ordinary. At the same time, a fine and dull pain came from the heart. I clenched the ballpoint pen in my hand. I know, this is Henry's response to me. It is also a lesson for me to overestimate my own capabilities. Teach me a lesson of my self-righteous naivety. Liking men is perverted, disgusting, and a stain that is too dirty to even say out loud. I was the only one who naively thought that I just fell in love with a man. There's no difference. Oh, how could it be different? Facing the strange looks along the way, I returned to the dormitory with a pale face. The other 3 people in the dormitory were there, discussing something intensely. But when I pushed the door open, all the discussion stopped abruptly. 3 pairs of eyes looked at me at the same time. I raised my head and saw my quilt and pillow on the floor in the middle of the room. It's wet on top. It smells like alcohol has been poured? The dormitory head Neil looked at me with disgust, turned around and put on a mask. Who knows if perverts like you carry any germs? Disinfection is the minimum respect for us. While cursing, he opened a form. Damn, sharing a dorm with a pervert is such bad luck. Have you filled out the application form for changing dormitories? Once I get to the new dorm, I'll have to buy some alcohol and disinfect it thoroughly. I paused as I pulled the stool away and looked up at them. Change beds? Are they going to change dormitories? Just because I like men? My eyes darkened and I looked towards the table next to me. Henry, do you agree? Henry crossed his legs on the table, playing games with an expressionless face. When he heard me ask him, his fingers paused slightly, he raised his head and looked at me quietly. Then, under the gaze of the other 2, he sneered. What else? 3. All the reluctance to give up was burned to ashes in this instant. I lowered my head and said, "Oh," turned around and started packing up. If you want me to leave, just say so. There's no need to do this. I just like men, I haven't really turned into a woman. Although they talked about changing dormitories, none of the 3 had the slightest intention of packing up their belongings. Isn't this just to show me and force me to leave? Satirical and roundabout. They are the ones who are truly dishonest and hypocritical, right? As I was talking, I unconsciously put more strength into packing my things. The imitation Tang Sankai pottery horse that had been on my desk was knocked out of the box and fell to the ground. Pa! It was smashed to pieces. Henry's expression changed almost immediately and he threw his phone onto the table. Grass. Toby, do you want to die? It's hard for me to describe the feeling of this moment. I'm actually not a reckless person. If I hadn't felt the difference in Henry's attitude towards me, I felt a tiny bit of signal. Why would I take the initiative to make it clear and confess my feelings? This pottery horse was made for me by Henry himself when he accompanied his ex-girlfriend to a pottery class. His ex-girlfriend asked him for it 3 times, using everything from acting cute to getting angry to threatening. But Henry refused to give it to her. The girl was irritated by his attitude and lost her temper. She cried and asked him, "Today, you must make a choice. Toma or me?" But facing the beautiful woman with tears in her eyes, Henry just smiled and carefully put the pottery horse into the box. In front of her, he deleted and blocked the message, then turned around and left. After returning to the dormitory, he placed the box on my desk like a treasure, whining and making a fuss. "Brother, I even threw away my girlfriend for you. How about we just make do with each other and you become my girlfriend?" This is not the first time Henry has said this. But say it often. It's almost become his catchphrase. My roommates have long been accustomed to it, and are even more accustomed to his favoritism towards me. Even in the second semester of my sophomore year. Because all the girlfriends he dated would quarrel with him because he valued me more. Henry, a well-known sea king, actually simply doesn't talk about girlfriends. I've been single for more than half a year. The scattered signals and blatant intimacy made me have ridiculous delusions. But in the end, it was a cruel discovery. That's really just wishful thinking. You have to take good care of this horse for me. I got it in exchange for a girlfriend. If I ever bump into something, I'll hold you responsible. The day he gave me Tauma, Henry's words still echoed in my ears. I looked down at the broken pieces on the ground, and for some reason I could still laugh. Isn't this better? It saves me from having to move. You. Henry looked at me suddenly, his eyes surprised. Are you really willing to move away? He actually thought I was just pretending like them? Or do you think I like him to the point of being shameless? Doesn't he himself find this very contradictory? Bang! My emotions were surging, and I even threw the cup Henry gave me to the ground. The huge, shattering sound gave me a sense of angry and refreshing release. I picked up the utility knife on the table and sneered. You don't need to disinfect. I'll do it myself. Make sure to clean up thoroughly before moving out. The dormitory fell into deathly silence. The three of them stared at me as I, like a mad dog, destroyed one by one all the items related to Henry and I over the past 2 years. Clothes, shoes, basketballs. Henry's face turned increasingly grim, and he suddenly grabbed my wrist. Don't be crazy, Toby. Put aside your thoughts from now on. There is room for you in the dormitory. Well, you don't have to move. Can't we just go back to being brothers as before? 6. For a moment I just felt ridiculous. No need to move? So they are disinfecting and changing dormitories. What is going on? This is a warning to me through practical actions. Forced me to put aside my disgusting thoughts about Henry as soon as possible. Otherwise, the three of them would definitely not be able to accommodate me. Should I thank you for being so tolerant of me and giving me a chance to make a new beginning? Henry frowned and said in a deep voice, Toby. I sneered, looked at Henry deeply, said nothing more, turned around and started packing. If you can't tolerate it, you can't tolerate it. Why pretend to be a saint? Back to the way it was before? What? Good brother? Even if I can do it, can he pretend that none of this happened and that he doesn't know how I feel about him? Can you feel that liking men is not disgusting? I didn't have many things to begin with, so after smashing the ones Henry gave me, I packed them into a suitcase. The rope was pulled, and I stood up and was about to leave. But his wrist was suddenly grabbed. Henry, who had been standing next to me with a cold face, finally couldn't help it and looked at me with a frown. You thought it through. You're moving out of this bedroom today, and don't even think about coming back again. I looked at Henry expressionlessly and slowly pulled my wrist out. The voice was calm. Well, I've made up my mind. I won't come back. Prejudice is like a thorn. Once it's etched into my heart, it's impossible to restore it to its original state. It's no longer possible for Henry and I to pretend that nothing had happened. But when he heard me say this, Henry seemed to be furious and nodded with an angry smile. Okay, Toby, you're awesome. 7. This post on the campus network caused a lot of controversy. The instructor naturally heard about it as well. Looking at my request for a change of dormitories, he frowned and said something meaningful. It's easy to move away, but where are you going to move to? The implication is obvious. Other male dormitories were not necessarily willing to accept me. I fell in love with someone of the same sex and it became like a plague. I'll go out and live on my own, director. Come to our place. I answered with a wry smile, and the nonchalant response from the person next to me came at the same time. I was stunned. When I turned my head, I saw the instructor from the sports department next door looking at me with a normal expression. What a handsome young man, he is suitable to live with us. The instructor frowned, turned his head, and said in a low voice, This is Toby. The physical education instructor distanced himself from him and continued to look at me, his voice not lowering. I know who he is. Why are you speaking so quietly? Toby, do you know where the men's dormitory is, 601? 601? I paused, my eyes confused. Why does it sound familiar? After running around, I finally completed the dormitory change procedures and returned to the boys' dormitory. It was more than 3 hours later, a little after 7:30 in the evening. It was getting dark early, and people coming and going in the boys' dormitory were basically going to eat or coming back from eating. I really didn't expect that there would be someone waiting for me at the entrance of the building. This man was wearing jeans and flip-flops, and his handsome face had messy hair. He leaned against the wall and yawned lazily. Seeing me coming back, he walked over and took my suitcase naturally, speaking in a deep and magnetic voice. Gordon, your new roommate, the counselor asked me to come down to pick you up. After saying that, the man turned around and walked into the building. I stood there, feeling a little dazed. I finally remembered why 601 sounded familiar. It's because of the Gordon in front of me. The first warrior in the academy who is tall, long-legged, and well-born, has charmed thousands of girls, but is now openly gay. Relying on his absolute intelligence, force, and financial resources, he was able to discount, subdue, dismiss, and drive away all the roommates who were prejudiced against him. As a result, he is the only one living in room 601 now. Gordon, I shuddered and hurried after him. Do you mind if I move in? Gordon glanced down at me without even stopping. Do you have an infectious disease? I paused. That's not the case, it's just… I was going to say, I like men. But think about it, who isn't? For a moment, there seemed to be nothing to be pretentious about. But Gordon stopped without waiting for my next words. Then he lowered his head and weighed the suitcase in his hand. That's all you have? Oh, where are the beddings? My expression froze slightly. Thinking of the bedding soaked in alcohol, I felt a little angry. Throw it away. Tisk, Gordon frowned and was silent for a while. You're just throwing the blanket around for no reason? So what are you going to do tonight? Sleep in my bed? What a coincidence. I was so focused on talking to Gordon that I didn't notice that the floor we were on was exactly the third floor where I originally lived. What's even more coincidental is that at the same time Gordon said, "Sleep on my bed?" The door to 303 just opened. The faces of Henry and the other two appeared before his eyes. The three of them looked at Gordon and me and showed subtle expressions. Especially. His dark eyes were fixed on my face, his expression gloomy. 9. Apparently, my roommate Neil had heard of Gordon, just like me. For the first time ever, he didn't mock me. He just looked at me and Gordon and sneered. TSK, you know how to find roommates. A perfect match. Gordon frowned immediately and glanced sharply at Neil's face. There is no need to say anything, the feeling of oppression is enough. Neil's expression changed immediately. He turned his head away and tugged at Henry behind him. I'm starving. Let's go. I'm almost out of appetite if I stay any longer. Henry didn't say anything, but kept his eyes on my face, as if waiting for me to say something. After a while, he just sneered and walked downstairs. I also calmed down and walked upstairs as if nothing had happened. It was just 1 or 2 steps, but his eyes couldn't help but drop down, looking at the receding figure. It would be a lie to say that I don't feel bad, it's just… Is this the man you like? It's normal. Gordon's faint voice suddenly came from my side, and I gasped in surprise. He didn't step firmly, missed the stairs, and fell down with a thump. I don't wear much in the summer, and today I'm just wearing work shorts. My palms and knees were unprotected and hit the steps directly, causing excruciating pain. My face turned pale. Gordon, however, looked normal with no change in expression. But he seemed to have a change of heart and helped me up and patted me on the back. What are you so surprised about? Hot post on campus, I'm not blind. I became even more stupid, forgetting the pain and staring at Gordon blankly. Is this the god who took down the boys' dormitory by himself? Are you so calm when talking about this? I thought Toby would move out of school. I forgot about Gordon. Outside the dormitory building. Without Gordon's pressure, Neil finally dared to speak. His expression was full of contempt and sneer. Now that these two perverts are together, the whole building feels disgusting. Henry stopped abruptly, looking back at Neil. What do you mean? What's going on with that guy? Neil was stunned, blinked blankly, and suddenly reacted after a while. Oh, you're a straight guy, so I guess you don't know. The guy who was with Toby just now is Gordon from the physical education department. He's 1 year older than us. He's quite handsome. As soon as he entered school, many girls chased after him. They were so fascinated. Henry's brows furrowed even tighter. Get to the point. That's the point. Don't be impatient, Neil said helplessly. The beauty from the chemistry department confessed her love to him in public that day. Guess what happened? This guy just said he likes guys. He came out publicly. Henry's eyes darkened. After his chest rose and fell a few times, his voice was a little light. You probably just found an excuse to refuse, right? Everyone thought so at first, but then someone saw him in a gay bar. Isn't this a sure sign that he likes men? Neil said, and suddenly moved closer to Henry with a strange look on his face, and lowered his voice. Didn't you just hear him say that he wanted Toby to sleep in his bed tonight? Gordon lives alone in room 601. Now that they are both gay, who knows? Hey, Henry, why are you going back home? Aren't you going to have dinner? 11. I fell quite hard. The whole knee is swollen. I sat down on the empty bunk bed and grimaced in pain. Gordon thought I was making a big deal out of nothing at first, saying that it was useless for a grown man to grumble like that. As a result, when I lifted my legs onto the bed, he saw the blood on my knees, his expression paused, and he reached out to scratch his forehead. Are you made of porcelain? Can it bleed if you bump into it? Is your sports department made of iron? No bleeding when bumped? I looked up and wanted to say something, but met Gordon's deep gaze. I realized then that he had been staring at my calves in a daze, not knowing what he was thinking about. Gordon finally came back to his senses, still looking cool and lazy. He turned around and went back to his desk. I was just about to lower my head and sigh at his indifference and ruthlessness when a dark shadow loomed in front of me. Gordon pulled a chair next to the bed and sat down, leaning forward. Move out of the bed. I'll apply medicine on you. It's a special medicine. It heals quickly, but it's a little painful. Just bear with it. I blinked, wondering how much pain it could cause, but the next second, it hurts. No, I can't bear it any longer. This potion is too stimulating. Don't move. Spread your legs. I can't even aim. I kept dodging in pain, making it difficult for Gordon to apply the medicine to the right place, so he simply held my legs and clamped them around his waist. If you can't bear it, just hook my waist. I didn't have time to react to how weird this conversation sounded. The pain was so severe that I clenched my fists and pounded the bed. That hurts, brother. Be gentle, you're pinching my thighs until they turn blue. The medicine irritated the wound and I shivered in pain. But before he could say anything else, the door slammed loudly. It doesn't look like it was typed by hand. It was more like a strong kick with the foot. Gordon and I were both stunned and looked towards the door. The next second, Henry's cold voice sounded from outside the door. Toby, open the door for me on the count of 3. Or, I'll break down this broken door today. 1, 2, 3. 12. As the 3 words fell, there was another loud noise at the door. It was a kick even more powerful than the one just now. With this force, I guarantee that the door will break if I kick it twice more. Gordon obviously realized this. I put my legs down, stood up, walked over and opened the door. Outside the door, Henry's eyes were red, and he looked like he was catching someone cheating with his foot raised, ready to kick. When he saw the door open, he slowly put his foot down. His chest heaved violently, and he looked at Gordon, as if he was relieved. Junior, what's up? Gordon leaned lazily against the door, raised his eyebrows at Henry with his thin lips. But Henry had already pushed past him and rushed into the house. After seeing the wound on my knee and the medicine on the stool, he obviously understood. For a moment, The look in Henry's eyes when he looked at me actually had a feeling of relief, as if he had survived a calamity and recovered something he had lost. But when I looked again, there was nothing there. Henry paused for 2 or 3 seconds, then his expression returned to normal. He turned around and looked at Gordon without losing any expression. "My former roommate is moving to a new dorm, so why not come and see me off?" "Okay, but..." Gordon raised his eyes and glanced at the person who was peeking out of the door to watch the fun. With just a raise of his eyebrows, everyone dispersed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. "Since it has come to the point of changing beds, I guess your relationship isn't that bad, right? Are you here to send me off?" 13. Henry's face suddenly darkened. He clenched his fists at his sides, veins popping out on the backs of his hands, and after his chest rose and fell a few times, he suddenly sneered. "Is there any decent person in this dormitory? Are you still worried about being indecent?" "Henry!" My voice also turned serious. "Why are you chasing me to my dorm to cause trouble? Are you sick? What? Don't you find it disgusting that these perverts like men like this? There are 2 gays who like men in this room now. He clearly hates it, but he's still staying here. Is he sick?" Henry seemed to be surprised that I would speak to him in such a tone, and there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. Then, the corners of his lips curled up coldly. "What? Do you think I'm in the way?" I'm too lazy to respond to his stupid remarks. He just tilted his head to look at the darkness outside, and spoke without any context. "It's past 8. Since Henry stopped dating, his life has returned to a stable and self-disciplined state. It's around 8 o'clock, usually the time when I study in the dormitory, and he works out next to me. After half a year, I can no longer tell whether it is my habit or his habit. But both of them continued this habit." Henry naturally understood what I meant, and the corners of his lips curled up. But there was no smile in his eyes. "Come on." 14. I said calmly, "It's not really a rush. It's just that I don't think we are in a relationship where we can sit peacefully in the same room." Henry sneered. "You're chasing me, Toby? Are you chasing me? Well, I'll drive you away." I simply nodded. Henry suddenly snorted, with a mocking smile. With a cold face, he pulled over an empty chair beside the table and sat down. Then, he took out his cell phone and started playing games. I was shocked by his action. "You. Shut up." Henry glanced at me, lowered his eyes, and said awkwardly with a livid face, "You promised to help me pass the makeup exam." After hearing this, I was speechless. Yes, that is indeed the case. On the day of the final math exam last semester, I had a high fever and fainted during the exam. Henry was so anxious that he carried me to the hospital without saying a word and skipped the exam. As a result, we both failed all the math exams and had to wait to retake the exam when we got back. At that time, Henry leaned against me like a boneless man, playing with a ballpoint pen and muttering, "I can't even count how many times, Toby. I lost so many girlfriends because of you. I failed another exam because of you. You have to be responsible to me. I don't know what to say about my girlfriend, but I feel really guilty about failing the exam." I tilted my head to look at Henry, who had already started drawing little people on the book, and I solemnly promised, "Okay, I'll take care of the makeup exam and I'll make sure you pass, okay? Deal." My little Sitsi has to be reliable. I still remember vividly the bright and handsome smile on Henry's face at that time. But it was just the moment when I came back after a summer vacation. But things have changed. Send the book to me tomorrow morning and I'll mark the key points for you. Take it home and memorize it and you'll pass. You don't have to come to me for tutoring every day, so as not to disgust you. I think this arrangement is considerate." But Henry's face was gloomy, and he opened his mouth. "I don't think you're disgusting, that post is not. Not anything." But he didn't say anything more. 15. During the freshman military training, there were leftover bedding. Gordon helped me buy a bed from the dormitory manager, which easily solved the bed problem. But Henry stayed in our dormitory until the lights were turned off at 11:30. The lights went out, and the room fell into darkness, with only the soft moonlight pouring in through the window. Gordon went to bed and watched the game leisurely. But he still didn't move. His leisurely and focused look even gave me the illusion that he was going to fight here until dawn. But I was wrong. Because at the same time as Gordon's soft breathing sounded as he fell into deep sleep, Henry finally put his phone down. He stood up from the chair, shook his neck, stretched, then turned around and left. The movement of closing the door gently was so smooth and neat that I was stunned. What is he playing? What I didn't know was, at the moment the door closed, Gordon on the upper bunk also opened his eyes. His eyes were clear and there was no trace of sleepiness. He turned over slowly with the corners of his lips curled up. 16. It feels really good to share a dormitory with a self-disciplined and hardworking athlete. When I opened my eyes the next morning, the first thing I saw was Gordon's muscular back. There is also breakfast already bought on the table. I paused and was in a daze for several seconds before I remembered that I was no longer in 303. My heart subconsciously felt empty, but then I felt a little relieved. I sat up from the lower bunk and stretched. Brother, your attribute is not the same as below, right? You are so kind. Gordon, who was changing his clothes, paused. He turned around and looked at me as if I were a reckless fool, with his eyebrows slightly raised. Toby, you really think you'll be safe if you move here, right? If you want to experience my physical strength, just tell me. The playful smile on my face disappeared immediately, and I waved my hands repeatedly. Gordon, you're wrong. Gordon snorted, put on his clothes, put on his bag, and was about to step out, but suddenly stopped. He tilted his head and looked me up and down, with the corners of his lips raised. That's exactly what he's made of. Which material? Don't think that I can't give you a Leo kick just because my leg is injured. Toby! Before leaving, Gordon suddenly lowered his voice. He lowered his head and thought for a few seconds, then said seriously, moving to 601 was actually the beginning of your troubles. It's not terrible to be an outlier. What's terrible is to be an outlier that others pay attention to. Be prepared. 17. I actually didn't understand what Gordon said at first. But it doesn't matter. Because that afternoon, I understood. In the half hour it took me to limp to class and back to the dormitory, I was pushed to the top of the campus hot posts again. This post is very concise and there is nothing else to it, just my weird walking posture. Another meaningful title. I heard that this confession pervert has moved to 601. I am a science and engineering guy, and I am not weak in liberal arts. This is the first time I realized that the power of words is so great. A tisk, coupled with 601, and my walking posture. As if nothing was said. It seemed as if he had said everything. I was a little confused, and for a moment I didn't know whether to be angry or helpless. A towel was suddenly placed over my head. It blocked my view of the phone. Those words in the comments section disappeared instantly. Then, my hands suddenly felt empty. I quickly pulled the towel off. Gordon, who had just taken a shower and was still smelling of shower gel, threw my phone on the table. Those who can change themselves are gods. Anyone who wants to change others is a psychopath. And the best way to deal with a psychopath is to stay away from him, not to listen, not to look, not to feel sorry for him, or even to try to reason with him. Have you ever seen a psychopath who can speak rationally? Gordon's expression was so calm when he said this. He was so calm that I felt like he wasn't practicing badminton. It's philosophical psychology. Brother, should I say it or not? You really put this bee in place. My depressed mood miraculously disappeared and I couldn't help but give Gordon a thumbs up. In my eyes, this person has really grown taller. The charm of personality began to glow golden. Gordon's face suddenly darkened and he picked up the bottle of medicine on the table. He sat over and slapped me. Spread your legs for me. 18. Why does this conversation sound so weird? Brother, can you be gentler? It hurts. Bang. At this moment, the door was roughly pushed open again. I was stunned for a moment, and when I looked up, I saw Henry walking in with a sullen face. Sat at the table next to me. Then he threw the math book on my desk, set up the computer and started typing. The posture was so natural that it felt like he was back in his own dormitory. I checked the time. It was 7:30 in the evening. Being on time, tisk, it's hard for him. It's done, just take it back and carry it on your back. The new semester has just started and the makeup exam is scheduled for a month later. Maybe the school was afraid that we wouldn't pass, so they gave us plenty of time. I circled all the key points of the math exam one by one. I was afraid that Henry wouldn't be able to concentrate, so I diligently circled a few key points that he must understand. With this level, even if he only memorized one sentence a day, he could still pass the exam with 60 points in a month. It's really guaranteed. But Henry didn't answer. He just looked up at me. After a while, he lowered his eyes and said in a low voice, "I didn't sleep well. So, do I have to cover him to sleep?" "Toby," Henry looked at me, his Adam's apple rolling slightly, "this is not right." "What's wrong?" I frowned. Henry didn't answer, but lowered his head to continue typing on the computer. The cursor of the open document flickered, and finally, 5 words appeared. Nothing is right. 19. I thought that after highlighting the key points, Henry would never come again. But every following night at 7:30, he would report to our dormitory on time. I think I don't understand them straight men anymore. "Henry, you didn't read the campus post, did you? Gordon and I are now the most popular homosexuals. What a pervert. You come to our dormitory every day like this, aren't you afraid of becoming the third pervert?" Henry's fists clenched tightly. There was a rare look of struggle on his face. In fact, Henry didn't seem to be very relaxed when he was in room 601. His toes were always pointed outwards. This represents a resistance and a desire to escape. In fact, after being exposed and driven away, I just felt aggrieved and as if I had suffered a breakup. But I don't hate the 3 people in 303. Because staying away from others is human instinct. I can especially understand straight men being homophobic. But what I can't understand is now. Henry is a homophobic straight man. Why does he want to get into the gay circle in a self-destructive way? I didn't get an answer. He didn't answer because of Henry. The only time they come to our dormitory is 7:30 when the busiest crowd is here. It was changed to the slightly quieter 8 o'clock. It's really helpless. It was like Henry had taken Gordon and I's class schedule. He doesn't come when we are alone. But as long as we are both in the dormitory at the same time, he will be there. Especially every evening, arriving on time at 7 o'clock. When I got there, I started playing games, using the computer, and doing homework. Stay until the lights are turned off. No, to be exact, stay until Gordon goes to bed, and leave on time. After more than a week, I even felt, "Gordon, do you think Henry is addicted to watching you sleep?" After taking a shower, I put on a pair of shorts and came out of the bathroom directly while drying my hair. But I never expected to run into Gordon, who was lifting weights. The 8 strong abdominal muscles were so visible that they immediately caught my eye. "Fuck, Gordon, you have such a great body." I chuckled twice, walked over, reached out and quickly rubbed his muscles. Fully appreciate the touch of a large slab of chocolate. Just when he was about to try again, his wrist was suddenly grabbed. I was stunned for a moment, and when I looked up, I found that Gordon looked a little tense. The Adam's apple rolled up and down. "Toby, can you be more self-aware?" 20. What self-consciousness? I was a little confused. "You don't allow me to touch you?" Gordon's chest rose and fell. His cheeks were slightly puffed up, as if he was gritting his teeth. After a few seconds, his voice became hoarse. "I feel like I'm gay." I was stunned for a few seconds, then smiled in a lewd way. "Is this conscious or unconscious? You are gay, I am gay, we are a perfect match. Gordon, please marry me." As I said that, I moved closer to Gordon. But his forehead was pushed hard and he was pushed away directly. "Go away, are you clear-minded enough to come to me?" Hey. I stood firm, not getting angry, and just looked up at Gordon and smiled foolishly. Don't say it, really don't say it. Once you peel off that cold and violent exterior, the real Gordon becomes more and more charming the more you get along with him. Self-disciplined, virtuous, insightful, smart, and damn handsome. Sometimes when I look at his muscular figure, I feel jealous of how everything goes well for him. Gordon is so good, whoever misses him is blind. I'll just empty my mind and put nothing else in it but Gordon, okay? Gordon, are you innocent? I said this on purpose, and there is something else behind my words. Not long after I moved in, I got to know several classmates from the sports department through Gordon. From them, I heard a piece of gossip about Gordon. Gordon, the best man in the world, has someone in his heart. It's hidden so well that no one knows about it. Very innocent. I'm envious. I'm really envious. I clicked my tongue twice, grabbed the two ends of the towel around my neck, and turned around to put on my shirt. I suddenly caught a glimpse of a dark shadow out of the corner of my eye, and I was startled. I looked up quickly and saw Henry standing at the door. He stared at me intently, and there was a color in his eyes that I couldn't understand. Gordon also saw him and found it funny. Junior brother, do you like our dormitory so much? If you really want to come, just submit your dormitory exchange application to the counselor. 601 warmly welcomes you. 21. His felicidad. But he didn't say anything about changing dormitories and just stared at me and said, Toby, move back. This word sounds a bit unfamiliar to me. What does moving back mean? Is it me who has lost my memory, or is it him? It's only been less than 2 weeks since I moved out of 303, right? Wasn't it him who said, once you move away, don't even think about coming back? Perhaps my eyes were too cold, Henry's expression softened a little, and he spoke again for the first time. You should have seen that the post is long gone. I nodded, but that was just a nod. That post, along with the one about my weird walking posture, suddenly disappeared on the 3rd day after I changed dormitories. It was deleted completely, as if it had never been posted. But I know it very well in my heart. It cannot be deleted. The screenshot of that post may still be on a student's phone. The fact that I like perverted men has been deeply engraved in every student's mind. So, you can move back. Henry stared at me and spoke slowly. As for the eldest and the second, I'll tell them to shut up. We'll be just like before. It's the same sentence again, just like before. Is Henry out of his mind? How could a guy in his 20s say something so naive? Although I am a bit thick-skinned, I am not a fool. Looking back at these 2 weeks' abnormal behavior and thinking about the present, I can only draw one conclusion. This person can't bear to leave me. But so what? The only thing in his reluctance was the brotherhood he had with his classmates. Or to put it more bluntly, he wanted to straighten me out. Even if it's just straightening the surface. 22. Henry, to be honest, I'm quite happy. At least the relationship over the past 2 years was not in vain. It's really not easy for you to do this for me. But as for sexual orientation, it's like the sky is going to rain and the mother is going to get married. It really can't be changed. The grudges in people's hearts can't be cured by deleting a few posts or giving a couple of warnings. Isn't Gordon a precedent? They have military force, financial resources, and influence. Even though he had told everyone to shut up, he still kicked out all his roommates and lived by himself. Henry was a little anxious. I didn't post that message. When you confessed your feelings, the head of the dormitory happened to hear it. Oh, inodet ikanakdeshigies. Henry never liked being in the spotlight. When it comes to posting to attract attention, his chances of doing so are really not as high as Neil's. But does it really matter who posted it? Perhaps my reaction was beyond his expectations. Henry's eyes were a little flustered. I don't think you're a pervert, nor do I think you're disgusting. I smiled coldly. Well, but you don't want others to think you are a pervert. This is why Henry said half of the sentence that day but did not continue to explain. Because he knows it in his heart. It doesn't matter who posted it. The important thing is that from then on, people who walked beside me were also forced to be mentally prepared. Treated as an alien. Accept strange looks and criticism. I don't force myself to take sides. I accept either staying or leaving. Henry had actually already made his choice. Henry, that's it. You're a straight man, so don't get involved with a pervert like me. Don't come here again. I said, sighed, and reached out to pat Henry's shoulder. Just as I was about to withdraw my hand, Henry grabbed my wrist with his backhand. It took quite a bit of force, but I couldn't break free. Henry's eyes gradually showed some resentment and helplessness when he looked at me. You think, I haven't tried it? Fuck you, Henry panted a few times. I fucking thought I wished you would just disappear. But no, I can't do it. You're the only one missing from the dormitory, but I just feel like something is wrong. It feels so empty. Do you think I want to spend my time here every day? I don't want to be here either. But whenever I think about the fact that Gordon is also gay and that something might happen between you and him, I get uneasy. Henry almost yelled as he finished the sentence. After his chest heaved violently a few times, he slowly let me go. He wiped his face with his hand and said, Toby, I'm serious. Please come back. I'm with you. 23. Henry spoke passionately, but I felt chilled to the bone. If it was 2 weeks ago, I would have rushed forward when I heard this. But in these 2 weeks, I have experienced firsthand what it means to be afraid of what people say. I also experienced with my own eyes what Gordon said. It's not terrible to be an outlier. What's terrible is to be an outlier that is noticed by others. So, facing Henry's words, I just feel naive now. Okay. I nodded and smiled, then walked over, hooked my arm around Henry's neck, and led him to the door. Let's go. Henry's eyes were initially filled with joy. But when he reached the door, he seemed to suddenly remember something. Stopped abruptly. Ah. I saw his reaction and smiled coldly. The arm that was around Henry's neck dropped down. Henry, do you still want me to go back now? Do you still think we can be the same as before? You know very well in your heart that after that post was published, there is no going back. Henry's expression paused, and the look in his eyes when he looked at me suddenly became flustered. He clenched and unclenched his fists. In the end, he said nothing and just slammed the door and left. The back is in a hurry. My eyes stayed on the place where his figure last disappeared. After staring for a long time, he just gave a slight bitter smile. I knew it earlier. 24. After that day, Henry never came again. I was also busy with classes, exams, and the final wave of preparation and transition before entering society from school. Although Gordon is a year older than me, he was recruited as an athlete and is preparing to continue his graduate studies. Every day I go out for training and come back to read. By the way, argue with me. Brother, you are planning to stay in school, but many people are about to graduate. Are you sure you want to stay single and not take the initiative? I picked up a fish ball from the spicy hot pot, blew on it, and glanced at Gordon opposite me. You know what, this guy is really patient. I have lived with him for more than 2 months, but I haven't noticed any signs that he has a crush on someone. It was hidden so tightly. Brother, I have to give you some advice on this. Love is not something you can just think about, you know? Even if the other person is straight and you don't plan to confess, you should at least go and get together with him, so as to avoid. Gordon made a tisk sound and put a piece of fish into my bowl. The voice was very calm. He is not straight, he has someone he likes. Ha! This news was really shocking. I didn't hold the fish ball firmly and it fell back into the bowl. The spicy hot pot soup splashed. Gordon was eating with his head down when the water splashed directly into his eyes. The chopsticks fell to the ground, and Gordon covered his eyes and ran to the toilet. What the hell? Toby, you did this on purpose, didn't you? I was also startled, so I quickly grabbed some paper and followed him into the bathroom and covered his eyes with it randomly. Brother, I was wrong. I was really wrong. I really didn't mean it. If you hadn't... Before he could finish his words, the cell phone in Gordon's pocket suddenly rang. His hands were wet and he couldn't answer the phone, so I helped him answer the phone and turned on the speaker. His instructor's voice came from the other end of the phone. Gordon, play your best in tomorrow's game. Don't let me down. Do you hear me? Got it. Stop nagging. Gordon wiped his eyes, his voice muffled. What's your attitude, kid? Tiske, you're so ungrateful. I specially sent your wife to your dormitory, and you still haven't thanked me properly. The call was then disconnected. Gordon looked at me with a panicked look on his face, holding the phone he had forcibly snatched away. 25. I am stupid. I really didn't expect it at all. The person Gordon has a pure crush on will be me. Because in my memory of my college years, he didn't even exist. Gordon was also very depressed. He sat next to me with red eyes and curled his lower lip. I passed by the basketball court when you were a freshman. I was playing basketball on the court at the time. Your calves were so white that they blinded me. I was distracted and got knocked out of bounds. But you looked at me with your big teeth bared, and the first thing you said was, "Fuck. Senior, you just took off. You almost pised me off to this." But I never thought that you, a fool, would give me a bottle of water right after that. I was holding that bottle of water at the time, and I saw you looking so happy, following Henry like a spoiled little wife, and I was attracted to you right away. I never looked away again, Gordon said, scratching the back of his head and tilting his head. Only then did I realize that the tips of his ears were extremely red. Well, I'm going to play basketball tomorrow. Do you want to come and watch? I only lost that one game in college, and it was because of you. Now that the window paper has been broken, I have to get back at this place. I lowered my eyes in silence and said nothing. The phone on the table vibrated slightly. It's a WeChat message from Henry. What if I'm willing to give it a try? 26. On the day of the basketball game, I still came. Sitting in the audience and watching Gordon in his jersey running freely on the court, I was a little dazed. It's only been 2 months. It's complete bullshit to say that I fell in love with Gordon. But I can't deny it either. Gordon attracted me. Maybe it's the suspension bridge effect. This person gave me a hand when my sexual orientation was exposed and I was at a loss and confused. It was bold and unrestrained, and it led me out of the haze with its clear and transparent voice. It seems normal to have a good impression of such an outstanding person around you. However, same-sex relationships not only have to deal with the usual conflicts of money and family, but also obstacles such as prejudice and perspective. How easy is it to really start? There was a person sitting in the empty seat next to me. I didn't notice him at first, but he kept tilting his head to look at me and I couldn't ignore him. I turned my head and looked into Henry's bloodshot eyes. This person seems, he really hasn't slept well for a long time. Toby, you win. Henry smiled bitterly. I can't do it. I admit it. Whether I am laughed at or treated as an alien, I accept it. As long as you come back, I can do anything. I stared at Henry's profile, and strangely enough, I felt calm inside. That's not necessary. Because I don't want you anymore. Henry, times have changed. Maybe fate has its timing. God may throw you a few times, but whether you can catch it depends on yourself. For me and Henry, from the moment that post was published and he chose to expel me, there was actually no going back. Henry's eyes suddenly turned red, and his voice began to tremble slightly. Why? Don't you like me? I'm just 2 months slower than you. How could I miss you? We have been together day and night for 2 years. Can you just let go of your feelings for me? I haven't let it go yet, I said calmly, leaning my arms back on the ground, but I will let it go sooner or later. Just leave it to time. But we don't have to do this. Henry got anxious and stepped forward and grabbed my hand. I was slow to react before, but it takes time for a straight guy like me to become gay, right? I can make an official announcement now and acknowledge you to everyone, as long as you come back. I've already come this far. What else do you want from me? 27. Toby! On the basketball court, a loud shout suddenly came. All eyes turned to me, and the next second, Henry let go of my hand. I smiled coldly, and Henry also reacted, with a flash of panic on his face. I just reacted subconsciously. I will change it in the future. As he said that, he wanted to come over and hold my hand. But I dodged it, looked across the crowd, and met the eyes of Gordon, who had won the game on the court. Gordon smiled brightly, waved his hand and shouted to me, "Toby, I like you. You don't have to care what others think. Outside the school, they are all shit. Once you enter society, your colleagues are all shit. But the person who accompanies you day and night and sleeps with you in the same bed is your oxygen. So, we're just living our lives. Whether he is gay or not, it doesn't matter. Just ask yourself, do you want to be with me?" After the shouting, the whole place fell silent. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, I covered my red face and laughed silently. This fool. But when I took my hands off my face, I didn't look at Gordon immediately, but at Henry, who was standing beside me with a dull look in his eyes. "So, how far have you come?" Henry stopped talking. I stood up from the audience and felt a sense of relief in my shoulders. My eyes fell on the basketball court and I shouted back, "I haven't decided yet. Wait a little longer. But congratulations, you have priority in the queue. As for the rest," I said it, "leave it to time."